I just feel like this is a massive gaslighting scene. I mean, the Hakeem Jeffries comparison, I think, is so unfair. He's talking about redistricting. He's not talking about a human being. He's certainly not talking about a Republican. And you say Democrats went out and called Donald Trump a threat to democracy. Absolutely. The guy still doesn't accept the 2020 results, and a majority of the party doesn't, as a consequence of the fact that he continued to proliferate that lie.
Damn!
Well, if you thought Kimmel riled up the president, wait until he finds out what Fox Liberal host Jessica Tarlov said in the wake of the White House Correspondents' Dinner this week.
True.
It is true.
The studies are, a lot of them are rebuked.
Okay, well, the Cato one, I actually read the...
See, it's been an interesting week in Washington following the attempted shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner last Saturday, where 31-year-old Cole Thomas Allen was arrested and charged with attempting to assassinate President Donald Trump. Now, as to be expected, Fox News have had a complete field day using this situation to outline what they've described as an uptick in violence from solely, quote, the extreme left.
Where would they get the idea that he's mentally deranged and that the cabinet and perhaps the military might have to do something about that? That he's already putting immigrants, innocent ones, in concentration camps and killing innocent fishermen. Where would they get the idea that he was a Russian traitor, a sexist, white supremacist who his slogan means really go back to when women and blacks couldn't vote? This isn't coming from the dark underbelly of the internet. This is coming from the mainstream media in the New York Times, on network TV, on network late night television. You go online and this is what they say. And they can't stop saying it because they can't dial it back. It's who they are.
Oh, wow. Republican lawmakers have used it to put forth legislation on the $400 million ballroom that they're claiming is a non-negotiable regarding national security.
What are your thoughts on some of the discussions about the ballroom and being included in the
I'm working on legislation to ensure that we are getting the ballroom funded. It's obviously a national security element to that, and it needs to be done. I cannot believe that a judge allowed a woman he approved her lawsuit because she walked by with her dog and thought it was ugly.
Is there any better use for taxpayer dollars than a ballroom?
Are you kidding? There's like hardly any money here that is actually going to that. He has got it. He has it funded. We just have to get it approved and get the lawsuit over with.
Is it an issue of like the Congressional Registry of Historic Places? Like what's the authorization process there?
You think passing a War Powers Resolution Act to save the two?
Yeah, if only kids in schools were offered the same full throttle support in the wake of school shootings. Now, once again, nobody here at Meidas or any prominent Democrat that I've seen for that part have offered anything but the most staunch condemnation of this attack or any forms of political violence. But to pretend that this is a left-wing issue would mean either the cognitive dissonance is off the charts or Will Smith from Men in Black has just paid you a visit. And Jessica Tarlov brought out the receipts when the panel discussed the increase in political violence across the United States in recent years, when one of her co-hosts made the sweeping allegation that it's somehow elected leaders on the left who are partially to blame for this. Tarlov first agreed that while a lot of radicalization comes from the internet, she fought against the argument that political violence is strictly a left-wing problem because, yeah, it's not. And she called it a massive gaslighting issue before highlighting just how black that pot is while referring to the fact that Trump still doesn't accept the 2020 election results. Meaning, yeah, to call that a threat to democracy is accurate. It is. It's probably the gravest threat to democracy you'll find. And this terrible situation that just transpired doesn't change that.
Let me ask you about the mission, because every time I see President Trump, he says this repeatedly, that the election was rigged in 2020. I mean, he says it all the time. We all know that. And it's almost getting lost because he says it so much. You've been at the FBI now 14 months. Have you done anything about that? And do you have anything to tell us about that?
Absolutely, Maria. Look. I've been with the president nearly since day one on this. As I told you earlier, I was the one that led the effort with folks like Trey Gowdy, Johnny Ratcliffe, and Devin Nunes to expose the corruption that tried to thwart President Trump's first presidential election run. and we saw the FISA abuses there. And I lived through it, and the media came at me then too. That just shows you that when you're over the target, you keep pummeling the target because the media is going to try and pummel you. We are not going to take this and have not taken this laying down. We did already indict former Director Comey, and that's going through the judicial process. But we also, at this FBI, even though we uncovered what we uncovered back in the House Intel days, I had to come in here and find rooms that they hid from the world. I had to come in here and find access on our computer systems in restricted and prohibited case files that they purposely put in places for no one to see and find. We have found all this information. We are working with our Department of Justice partners, and I am never going to let this go because they not only have personally attacked the presidency of the United States and President Trump, but they tried to thwart our elections and rig the entire system. And that is not something that is going to stop. That is not something I'm going to allow on my watch. But you just have to remember, they built this disease temple over 20 and 30 years. We've got all the evidence. I can announce on your show that we've got all the information we need. We're working with our prosecutors at the Department of Justice and their Attorney General Todd Blanche, and we are going to be making arrests. And it's coming, and I promise you, it's coming soon.
And the Liberal voice on Fox News then read a list of remarks that Trump has made about Democrats over the years, from enemy within to communists, Marxists, fascists, radical thugs, vermin, garbage, traitors, sick, party of hate, evil, etc. I think he called them Satan at one point.
I just feel like this is a massive gaslighting scene. I mean, the Hakeem Jeffries comparison, I think, is so unfair. He's talking about redistricting. He's not talking about a human being. He's certainly not talking about a Republican. And you say Democrats went out and called Donald Trump a threat to democracy. Absolutely. The guy still doesn't accept the 2020 results, and a majority of the party doesn't, as a consequence of the fact that he continued to proliferate that lie. The language, part of the being the most important person, certainly in the country and arguably in the world, is that you have great responsibility to set the tone. And Republicans who are out there criticizing Democrats right now are the ones who run from reporters in the hallways when Donald Trump has done something absurd, like celebrate Rob Reiner's death, or say, Bob Mueller, good riddance, whatever it is. And you say you can run through things Democrats have said. Donald Trump, enemy within, communists, Marxists, fascists, radical thugs, vermin, garbage, traitors, sick, party of hate, evil, and Satan. You're right about that data. It's disturbing. But the more important data to this is what's come out from Cato, which is where the violence is actually coming from, checking exactly the cause. There has been an uptick in left-wing violence. Absolutely, it is an issue. I want to solve it. But it's still more right-wing violence. And
not true.
It is true.
The studies are, a lot of them are rebuked.
Okay. Well, the Cato one, I actually read the debunking of the Cato one, and look at the classification of a 2009 shooting, for instance, which was allegedly, according to the debunking, about a complaint about dog pee, and doesn't mention that the guy had been posting on a neo-Nazi site. Everyone is going to go to their corners on this. It is regrettable, but the truth should still matter in it. And conveniently forgetting that liberals like President Obama, for instance, who had someone shoot into the White House where Sasha Obama was, got up to the second floor. Secret Service for like 5 days didn't even know what happened until someone discovered that there was glass remnants in there. We don't talk about that. Or the pipe bomber from 2018 who sent pipe bombs to Obama and Clinton, for instance, George Soros, et cetera, in court said motivated and radicalized by Trump. The responsibility lies with all of us, but it has to start at the top here. And I agree with Charlemagne that discussion is one that Republicans should start taking a part in if there is any way to come back together in this country.
So, number one, in terms of elections, there are people who still think George Bush is an illegitimate president. That never stopped for 8 years. It was unbelievable because of Florida. But I'm just saying,
but Al Gore conceded.
But it was nonstop, and you had people protesting from day one. Al Gore.
He didn't.
So 2020, I guess it was, wow, that's so long ago. With George Bush's first term into his second term, illegitimate president. The one thing,
and yeah, this is something that I spoke to regarding Melania and Donald Trump calling for the firing of Jimmy Kimmel for what they have deemed as a sick joke to them. The Republican Party, the same ones clutching their pearls, looked the other way when Donald Trump's celebrating the death of Robert Mueller, or, I don't know, making the horrific murder of Rob Reiner about how he had Trump derangement syndrome. I mean, We can simultaneously say that what has happened here is reprehensible and political violence is not the answer, while also maintaining that the man who still believes he won an election 6 years ago and went ahead and implemented court orders to try and prove it, which were thrown out by his own judges, by the way, and still talks about it on the daily, is a threat to democracy.
Those who constantly falsely label and slander the president as a fascist, as a threat to democracy, and compare him to Hitler to score political points are fueling this kind of violence.
But under Biden, who was an incompetent president, he was grossly incompetent. Look, the election was rigged. You know that. I know that. Everybody knows that now. And it's all come out, and it's coming out. But under Biden, if you take a look at what happened, when he was president, that's a war that would have never happened. Russia attacking Ukraine.
Yep.
And I ended 8 wars, including Pakistan.
Yeah, and you have, and as many of your fellow Democrats, have used some heated rhetoric against the president. And do you think twice about that when something like this happens?
What rhetoric do you have in mind?
Just talking about some of the fact that he, is terrible for this country and so on and so forth. I understand that that's your democratic right, but overall, do you
I have
a
no
responsibility?
personal problem with Donald Trump at all. I mean, I talk about the policies of this administration, the authoritarianism like we saw on display in Minneapolis, where 2 of our citizens were gunned down in the streets simply for exercising their First Amendment rights. Renee Good, Alex Preddy, and others have, died in custody. I'm talking about policies. I don't personalize it. And I certainly have never called the press the enemy of the people. I think the press are the people's best friend. And that's why it's written right there into the First Amendment. We need the press to be a vigilant watchdog against every level of government, federal, state, local, all of it.
You're not going to get an argument from me on that. Before I let you go.
We're not doing this. We're not retreating from the truth because the same political party that mocked Paul Pelosi when there was an attack on his life or failed to mention ever Melissa Hortman when they're discussing political violence, who was murdered, by the way, want to control the narrative and paint conservatives as the sole victim and that right-wing violence is somehow rarer than a hair on Stephen Miller's head. It's just not bloody true.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.